Reactor online. Sensors online. Weapons online. All systems nominal.
Hey everyone, B1B Flyer here. In this video I'm going to show you how to get these glow effects in your weapon barrels, typically for PPCs or for plasma rifles or even anything you want to have a glowing effect. It's pretty simple, uses some basic colors and a couple of simple techniques. For equipment, today I'm using a Monument Hobbies Creature Caster Bomb Wick. It is a synthetic zero brush. I really like their brushes. Check them out if you like their stuff. I don't get any kickbacks or anything, I just like the brushes. If your model doesn't have the barrels drilled out, so for instance this new sculpt, it's got these little dimples in here. If you like those, great, it makes them easy to paint. If not, you can use a pin vise drill and drill them out to make them nice and concave. Don't drill too deep, you don't need a very deep recess. You can see I've cleaned up the openings on this one here that I'll show you as a demonstration to paint. If you go too deep, natural shadows will fight against you in trying to make that appearance of light inside the barrel. I'll be using white Reaper Master Series LED blue and Game Color Magic Blue. I like this trio, but you don't have to use the same. Anything similar like this royal blue and an Andrea blue or a pastel blue, whatever you happen to have on hand. Try not to go too much darker than this royal blue. Depending on what you primed with or how your stages of painting work, you may have a really dark or a black color inside the recess. If you don't, great, you probably can skip this, but anytime I have a really dark shadow in the barrel, I like to put a base color of whatever color it might be that I'm going to be painting. I do this with my laser barrels and things like that as well. So I'm going to take just a medium blue, it doesn't need to be super dark, and all I'm going to do is kind of cover the inside of the barrel with something other than black. I'm going to let it dry. I'll probably do 2 coats. Once that's done, now I've got a nice foundation for the blue and then the white to be on top of, and we're not fighting over that black with the transparency of the paint. If you have something more like this, where maybe you've got a wash over some silver, you don't really need to do this step. You can skip it, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. Once that base layer is dry, if you did it, now it's time to take the actual blue that you're going to use as a light tone and just fill the barrel or the dimple with the color. Try not to get out too close to the edges. If you do, that's fine. You should be able to touch it up later, but try to be as neat as you can and just don't overload your brush too much. The lights that I use for video is going to wash this out a little bit, so it's going to look brighter, and it'll always photograph better than it'll look in person. So keep that in mind. I'll have photographs at the end. If you're working on one of the newer models or one of the sculpts that has the raised dimples in the center, you can either drill them out or you can follow the same practice, coating everything inside the barrel. Again, trying to keep it off of the edges. It may take 2 coats to get this done depending on the thickness of your paints and the colors that you're using. Again, you want some vibrancy, so you really want to have as much coverage from this paint as you can get. I'll be doing 2 coats on this, and then we'll move on to the white. Now that my light blue is dried, I've got some white paint. I've added just a touch of water to it to thin it out. Again, using your good detail brush with a nice tip, don't overload your brush, and just put a dot of white paint at the very bottom of the recess. Work up to this if you aren't sure of your hand steadiness, but you just don't want to fill up the dish with a bunch of paint, so make sure you just don't have too much on your bristles. It doesn't need to be perfectly round, it doesn't need to be completely perfect, because we're going to throw a bit of a glaze over it. And you could stop with this if you wanted to. Now we're going to take that same white paint. I've got a little bit of water on my paper here. I'm going to build a white glaze. Looking for a very thin, almost fat-free milk type of consistency. The trick with this is to not overload your brush with so much water that it just pools into the barrel there. You want some fluidity, but you don't want it to be too much. So what I like to do is after I'm done mixing that glaze is drying my brush off on a paper towel really quick and then go back and reload that glaze so that you don't get the paint out of your control. Now I'm just putting it back in the middle of the barrel, and I want it to puddle because I want this white to create a nice little gradient over the blue and the white. It may take a couple coats depending on how your paint's worked, but once you're done with the first coat, let that dry completely. You really need to let that dry. The glaze will lift off if you brush it too much. For the awesome, I'm going to add a second color, and this is where I was saying you don't necessarily need 3 colors, but now I'm going to use some of that LED blue, and I'm going to go over that magic blue that I set as the base. That's going to give me just another lighter tone of blue to help put that effect in the absence of shadow to show a glowing lighting effect coming from the inside of the barrel. It's fairly thin. I'm not trying to completely cover the blue beneath it, but that'll just again help the white that we're going to put over the top of that be just that much more vibrant because it's got an even lighter color to go off of. So the last LED blue has dried, and I've gone in and already applied just a touch of thinned white to the raised areas. It's really not easy to see on camera due to the washout effect. If you want to achieve a purple effect, or any other color for that matter, using the same 2 to 3 colors including white, you can achieve that using the same steps, starting with the middle of the tone. Don't go too dark when it comes to the purple or the green or whatever color you might be using. I used a medium purple, blue violet, and of course some white, and I actually added some white to both of these colors as I was applying them to lighten them up just a little bit. That I did. So you've got the basic easy 2-color way I showed you how to do on the Red Awesome, and then kind of the extra steps you can do to maybe add a little more gradient and a little bit of variation, but either one you can do to get very similar results. It's easy to play around with the colors, adding white a little bit here and there to raise up the vibrancy. You don't necessarily need 3 colors. You can do it with 2 and just adding some white. You don't have to use much white at all, actually. You can skip the glazing with the white and glaze with a lighter color like that light blue, maybe with just a touch of white added to it so that you're not dealing with all the issues that white paint is known for. Here's the finished result. I hope you found this tutorial useful. Place your questions or comments in the section below. Hit subscribe. Follow us on Camo Specs Online on Facebook. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Shutdown sequence initiated.